I asked Asher if he would be willing to give his testimony this morning through a little Q&A. Bad things, man. Asher's got a life that I think kind of relates back to this story a little bit. You've got a testimony, I think, that lays it out in a similar way that many of us might not be the exact same story, but I'm sure you can insert and replace the sins. You can replace certain things for yourself. As you hear Asher's story this morning, as we talk, I want you to envision yourself up here. Not from the anxiety standpoint. I want you to envision yourself up here, and at what point, what place are you in this testimony? Is it even a testimony yet? Because it just may be a testimony to come. Asher, thanks for joining us, man. Yeah. So, Asher, tell us about the family you were born into. I used to watch a lot of Oprah when I was a kid. My parents let me home with my brother. And when we weren't trying to kill each other, because that's what good brothers do, I was usually trying to get my time in watching Oprah. And so Oprah always said, I had a terrible childhood. Asher, let's start at the beginning. What family were you born into? What Adam and Eve were created by God. They heard directly from His Word, directly from Him. Tell us about your family and what you were born into.
So I was born into a Christian home. I was raised like Seventh-day Adventist / Messianic Jewish, kind of.
What's that mean?
That tradition. Yeah. So there's a lot of emphasis on Old Testament law. So if there was anything that was done very well in that, I knew God's law. I knew God's word. I was taught from a very young age God's righteous demands.
So God's righteous. You grow up, you're in a family, you're learning, hey, this is what God's word says. But you have kind of a similar response. As you're living with God's word, but you have a similar response as Adam and Eve. Tell us a little bit about that. You made a choice to not follow God. Mm-hmm. Tell us about how that happened and what that looked like.
Well, it's difficult to put like a specific date on it or something. I mean, nobody's born a Christian. Yeah. So in hindsight, I can see little things when I was a little kid or whatever, and then more obvious and ugly things as I got older and a teenager and whatnot. But my life was about me.
Yeah.
I lived for myself.
You live for yourself. What's that look like? So for you guys, think about living for yourself. What's that look like? Think about your own self. Teenager, living for yourself. Tell us a little bit about that, Asher. And why? Why would you? I mean, you grew up knowing God's word. Why would you live for yourself? Why would you make that kind of a decision?
Because I wanted to. I talked to the youth group kids a lot about making yourself your own God. That's sin, and that's what I did. And redefining right and wrong on my own terms, for my own convenience, whatever I wanted to do, I did. So that took a lot of different forms, whether stealing, alcohol, drugs, sex, whatever it was.
Yeah.
I like the way that Solomon puts it. I didn't deny myself anything that my heart wanted.
Wow. I didn't deny myself anything that my heart wanted. Let's stop and think about that one for a second. Where are you at? Where are you at in that spot? Asher. You grew up, I mean, you were going to church still though, right?
Yeah, I was going to church.
While you were doing drugs and all this other different stuff and everything? Yeah. You were still going to church?
Well, it was mandatory.
It was
in my home.
Yeah.
I had to go to church. Usually was like once or twice a week, because Saturday for the Seventh-day Adventist stuff, and then Sundays as happened later. And then my mom made me go to youth group too. And I always would have identified as a Christian, I guess. It was kind of a cultural identity, family identity for me. I never didn't believe in God. I just did what I wanted to do. I was my own God.
So if somebody asked you, they're like, hey, Asher goes to church, he must be a Christian. Oh, Asher, he's with that family, and they're really good Christians. That's how you would have identified if somebody said, hey, what do you believe? Are you a Hindu, a Buddhist, an atheist, or a Christian? Even though you were out doing all these other things and basically running from God, it sounded like.
Yeah, I would have said something to the effect of that I was a Christian, or maybe that I wasn't that into it, or I'm not that religious, but I believed in God. I still probably would have said that I was a Christian.
Yeah. So I want to throw this out because I think this is really important. This is a PSA right now in the middle of Asher's testimony. Don't take youth group away from your kids. I've been involved in a bunch of churches, and one of the things that I've seen people give and hand out as a punishment is, you don't get to go to church. You don't get to go to youth group because you love it too much. I'm going to discipline you by keeping you from going to youth group. I'm going to discipline you by keeping you from going to church. Here's a tip. It's a secret you're allowed to share. Have your kids around people you want them to be like. If you take that away, there's a problem, right? I'm not just saying that because Asher's the youth leader. Anyway, back to Asher's story. Asher, what happened? So this is all going on. And actually, you told me yesterday, and I liked how you actually said it. You said essentially and effectively, you weren't like going to the church of Satan, but you would say, I probably more identified as a Satanist in my ways of acting.
I mean, if you talk to somebody that is a self-identifying Satanist, they'll tell you that they don't like stand in a circle and sacrifice goats to Satan. Satan teaches you to worship yourself.
Yeah.
That is Satanism. Because if you're worshiping yourself, you're not worshiping God.
And so I think this is a huge message to us here at the church. Because we say, oh no, I'm not a Satanist. Oh no, I don't serve the enemy of God. But if you're not serving God, you're serving Satan. You can't stand in that middle line, essentially. So Asher, what happened, man? I mean, here you are, you're doing this. I mean, how do you get from here to your life committed to Christ? What took place? Who was involved in your life? How did that all happen? How did God grab a hold of this Adam? How did he grab this Adam and basically say, I'm going to make you new? How did he chase after you?
There was a lot to it, and in hindsight, I can see how God worked through the circumstances, and I mean, I couldn't get away from Christians. That was one part of it. So my youth pastor was a big part of it. Pretty much all through high school, even though I didn't really give any indication of having any desire to change the way that I was living or anything like that. He would get together with me one-on-one, talk about Jesus. And
Monday morning, 9 o'clock, oh, I got Asher again, that guy who's out there doing bad things. Let's give Jesus He kept on coming.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, hey, Asher, this isn't working. Did he ever say to you at any point, you know what, Asher, it's been 3 years, maybe we should call it quits?
Not once.
What did you see in that relationship?
I mean, that's the gospel. He demonstrated the gospel to me, and not giving up, not becoming discouraged that he wasn't seeing fruit in that.
It wasn't like, hey, Asher, you need to do this or we're going to have to stop. You need to say this prayer or we're going to stop. It was literally just, I'm just showing up to show you God's love. Mm-hmm. You mentioned a couple other folks. Tell me about how God used them in other circumstances.
Well, I was working for this weird Christian guy over at the school. It's Jeremy. And then...
you mean Christians work in public schools? Give me a break. No, jeez.
And I was living in their house, actually, with a few other guys who also loved Jesus.
A couple bros.
We call it the bro pad, affectionately. And Joe McGarvey came back from Camp Spofford and was just really on fire for God and just so excited about what he had learned in God's Word and how just so excited of the beauty of Christ, and it actually made me angry.
It made you angry,
Yeah,
mad?
Yeah.
Because he's sharing God's word with you.
I didn't want to be preached to. I mean, it's
Wow.
if what he was saying was true, then the implication is that I can't continue to live my life how I want to.
Oh, okay. Yep, that makes sense. So you've got a youth pastor who keeps showing up, not asking you to do anything other than show up. You're willing to come, he's willing to come, and he's just sharing God's word with you. You've got friends that you're living with who are believers. You've got a boss who's a believer. You've got a friend who comes back and he's ticking you off because he's sharing God's word. What happens next and why?
Well, about this time, one of my relationships that I chose ended pretty terribly, and Joe actually gave me this book, which I recommend. It's called The Sacred Search by Gary Chapman, and it is a book on relationships and dating. And I read that kind of thinking, well, my way isn't working. Maybe the Christian perspective has something that'll help me. And
So we're going to use God's way to make you feel better. Wow, that's really that's really thoughtful.
God's way to get what I want, basically. And it was pretty incredible. Like, I'm reading the book, and it explains in no uncertain terms exactly why my way isn't working.
Yeah.
And shows me exactly why the things that I've chosen have ended up where they've ended up.
Yeah. So you give your life to Christ. Tell us about that. There was a time you were telling me about. It's hard to pinpoint for a lot of us. For myself, I know it was hard to pinpoint. How do you say, at this point, Sean and I were talking at one point, and I said, when were you saved? And he said, from the foundations of the earth, brother. I love it. I was chosen from the foundations of the earth because there was nothing I could do. And I'm like, amen, for Ephesians 1. So going back to this piece, what took place? If you had to put your finger on something that stands out to you, what took place and when?
Well, like you were saying, it is difficult to really put a date on it because I would have identified as a Christian throughout the whole thing pretty much. But
So you still thought you were a Christian,
oh yeah,
and then you became a Christian.
and realized that I was never a
You
Christian.
realized you were never a Christian. That's an interesting, yeah.
But I began to read God's word. I began to go to church while I was reading that dating book, and he talked about scripture in that. And I saw my sin for what it was through that. And I remember if I had to put a specific moment to when my life changed, I was driving back to Winchester from Keene, and I was praying, and I was like, I've had enough. Me living my life on my own terms for myself is not working. I'm done with that. I'll live for you now. I'm yours. Use me.
That's it. God, I'm yours. Use me. Do you remember when you said those words? Do you remember when you said that to God? Remember that time? For some of you who are here, you might not have said those words yet. Asher, how'd that change your life? How'd that change that pursuit of wanting fulfillment in your way, in your desire?
The definition of that changed pretty significantly. But I was reading God's word. I was coming to church, and I really couldn't get enough. So when I first got saved, I think I was at one point doing 4 midweek Bible studies at a time, plus one-on-one stuff. So I dug really deep into discipleship and getting a bunch of godly men around me that could speak God's word into my life, which has been huge in my spiritual growth. Huge.
It's huge. So if it was available, you went to it. If it was available and it was God's word, you went there. And I want to encourage folks this. If you want to grow in your relationship with God, I think what you're saying, Asher, is I didn't do it alone. I didn't sit in my room and read a couple books by myself, write a book report. You actually sat down with other guys And you let them ask you questions, you asked them questions, and you got into God's Word?
Me doing it by myself was me in high school. That's where that ended up. So.
Yeah. So what's next? I mean, here you are. I mean, most folks, they would close the chapter right here and they'd be like, wow, excellent. God did a good job. We're done. Asher's a believer. And unfortunately, I've seen a lot of churches do that. Our hands are slapped together and we say, we're done. You said a prayer. You said, I'm done, enough. I even go to a couple Bible studies. What's next and why?
Well, there's implications to that my life isn't about me anymore. So right now that looks like I'm going to Moody Bible Institute to learn to be a pastor.
Yeah, praise God.
So if my life isn't about me, then the only thing that I can do is what he's calling me to do.
We were talking about the reminder, and I think we're going to wrap up with this question because I thought it was really neat. Asher and I were talking about grace. We were talking about the reminder of grace. And I thought that this was a really powerful thing because I think that when you think about your own story, and when Asher thinks about his story, we were kind of chatting about this. You've done nothing, I've done nothing but destroy my life. We've destroyed our lives. You're not good enough, I'm not good enough. Asher just told us here. I mean, our pursuits are just exactly like Adam and Eve. We try to do things on our own. God loves us enough that he says, go ahead. Go ahead, take your inheritance now. Like the prodigal son. Take your inheritance now and use it how you will. I'll be right here when you're ready to come home. I'll be right here when you're ready to come home. No, I might even chase after you. Tell us a little bit of that reminder, Asher, because when you gave your heart to Christ, you studied, you're heading off to Bible college. Tell us about how this has impacted your relationship, your marriage, and that reminder of grace that God gives you each day.
So when I became a Christian, it seemed to me that justice was that I spend the rest of my life alone. That inheritance had been squandered, and God would be perfectly right to, I don't know, I'll be a monk or something and just live my life alone forever. And pretty early in my Christian life, I met my wife, Anne. And we say our verse is John 1:16, which says that from his fullness we've been given grace upon grace. So I really do see my wife Anne as God's grace to me, and that he restored that squandered inheritance. He gave me his daughter to take care of, me, a wretched sinner. And Anne actually means gracious or grace. So it's pretty clear to me
that it's God's grace. You know, the thing is, folks, to wrap this piece up, to wrap up our time together here and head into worship, you know, he reached into the dust and he created something beautiful out of the dust. He created mankind in his image. You are created in the image of God, but he loved you so much, he gave you the opportunity. He empowered you with contrary choice. He loves you that much that he wants you to be able to experience what it is to love him back. But you and I have chosen not to love God. We chose instead to do things like Asher said, according to our will, just like Adam and Eve did. And God, loving us, said, okay, here's my inheritance. Everything that I have given you, that I know you will use it against me. I love you so much, take it. I'll be right here when you're ready to come home. No, I will chase after you like the good shepherd who chases, who leaves the 99 for the one. And you know, the thing that's amazing about this entire story is simply this, is that you couldn't choose him. You didn't have the power. I didn't have the power to choose him. In my own strength, I just wanted to pursue myself. Asher, in his own strength, he put believers in your path. He put Bibles by your bedside. He sent people your way so that when you looked and you said, God is doing nothing but destroying my life, there was someone there by God's grace to remind you that he still loves you, to draw you to him. We are called to be partners in the gospel, partners in grace. Let's make sure that we worship him for who he is. When Asher wakes up every morning, he gets to turn over and see Grace, see Anne, who means grace. Hopefully your spouse's name doesn't mean something like Satan. Everybody looks at their spouse and they're like, what's your name mean, honey? Quick, shoot. We're going to change that down at the courthouse later. But seriously speaking, God is restoring. He's taking what you destroyed and he's now making a beautiful thing out of that.